What happens when a kind-hearted woman walks into a luxury dealership and they treat her like dirt, never realizing who her husband really is? It was late afternoon in Memphis, and the sky outside glowed the color of sweet tea, amber and heavy with the weight of early summer. A warm breeze swept along the sidewalk as Miss Thelma Brooks, dressed in a simple lavender blouse and slacks, made her way up the wide concrete steps of Vaughan Elite Motors, the most prestigious car dealership in the city. Her pace was slow, steady, and proud. She carried a brown handbag on her forearm and wore her hair neatly pinned, soft grey curls tucked beneath a straw hat. To the folks inside, she didn't look like anyone important. That was their first mistake. Thelma had come alone, though her husband Franklin had offered to come with her, but she had waved him off. "This one's for you, baby," she'd told him that morning over breakfast. "You always wanted that green Cadillac with the cream interior. Time you had it." Franklin had smiled behind his newspaper. "You sure you don't want me to come along?" she chuckled. "I've been buying cars longer than some of those boys been alive. I'll be just fine." And she truly believed would be. But as Thelma stepped inside the dealership, the air shifted. The floor glistened like glass. High-end models lined the showroom, Rolls Royces, Bentleys, and Cadillacs, all shining like they'd never seen a drop of rain. Jazz played softly through the speakers. At the front desk sat a young receptionist tapping away on her keyboard. She looked up at Thelma briefly, then back down, offering no greeting, no smile. "No, may I help you?" Thelma cleared her throat. "Hi there, baby. I'm looking to speak with someone about the Cadillac out front." The receptionist blinked, visibly annoyed at the interruption. "You mean the Escalade?" "No, the Eldorado," Thelma corrected. "The vintage model. The one with the tan leather?" "Oh," the girl said, biting her lip, then motioned toward the showroom. "Talk to Derek. He's over by the Rolls." Thelma nodded and made her way across the floor, heels clicking gently. Derek Vaughan stood tall in a tailored navy suit, shoes so polished they caught the reflection of every overhead light. He was mid-laugh with another customer, flashing that too perfect smile of a man who'd never struggled a day in his life. Thelma waited politely off to the side, but Derek noticed her immediately. His eyes flicked from her plain clothes to her handbag, and back again. He turned to Andre, a younger salesman beside him. "Andre, help Miss..." He gestured vaguely. "Mom, find the coffee machine." Thelma chuckled, thinking he was being kind. "Oh no, sweetheart, I didn't come for coffee. I'm here to ask about that Eldorado y'all got out front." Derek's smile dimmed. "Really?" he asked, voice coated in sarcasm. "That model's priced a bit high. Most folks, looking for pre-owned vehicles, head to our sister lot across town." "I'm not most folks," she said plainly. "No offense, but we've had folks come in trying to pose next to those cars for social media. You know, to look like they got money," he said with a smirk. "I'd hate for you to waste your time." Andre shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Thelma, meanwhile, kept her voice even. "I didn't ask for a photo shoot. I asked about a car." Derek crossed his arms. "It's $500,000, fully restored. We don't usually take inquiries without a credit check or a banker's letter in hand." "I see," Thelma said, adjusting her purse strap. "Well, I've got a checkbook and a clean record. That count for something?" He laughed. Actually, laughed. Loud enough for two junior staff near the front desk to look up. "You serious?" he said, raising an eyebrow. "You really think, look, miss, we cater to a particular clientele. Maybe try the Buick dealership down the block." And just like that, she was dismissed. "No, thank you for coming. No, can I show you something else? Just air, cold, heavy air." Thelma stood still for a long moment. Then she reached into her purse, pulled out her sunglasses, and gently slid them on. "All right, baby," she said, her voice low. "You have a good afternoon." She turned and walked out. No one followed her. No one cared. But someone had seen it all. Across the showroom, Seated in a quiet lounge corner beneath the oversized Wall of Excellence plaque, sat Mr. Franklin Brooks, quietly sipping a cup of burnt dealership coffee in a styrofoam cup. He wore tan slacks, a linen shirt, and a neutral expression. His fedora rested beside him on the table. Not a soul recognized him. Not a soul realized the man watching them was the founder and majority owner of Vaughan Elite Motors. He hadn't come to inspect. He'd come because something hadn't felt right. For months, turnover was high. Customer satisfaction was down. The reports from the Birmingham branch didn't match what he knew his company stood for. So, like any good CEO, he decided to see for himself. He hadn't expected to watch his own wife be humiliated. He rose slowly. No rush. No theatrics. Then he reached for his phone and sent a single message to his executive assistant. Boardroom. 8 a.m. Tomorrow. Have HR pull full reports on Birmingham. Staff. Start with Derek Vaughan. He added one more line. And tell them I'm bringing my wife. And when he stepped out of the building and saw Thelma standing beneath a tree, sunglasses on, quiet as dusk, he simply walked up beside her, kissed her cheek and said, "Come on, baby, let's go get that car." She didn't ask where. She already knew. Tomorrow, she'd be walking in with the man they thought didn't exist, and he wouldn't be walking in quietly. The next morning, the staff at Vaughan Elite Motors was moving just a little faster. Something was off. Andre had noticed it the minute he walked through the door. The receptionist, Jasmine, whispered that corporate had called late last night. Unannounced meeting. Full staff attendance. No exceptions. Did someone screw something up? She murmured as he passed. Andre had only shrugged. Might be one of the other branches, but even as he said it, his gut told him it wasn't. Out on the showroom floor, Derek was already in his suit and ready for the day, pacing near the Rolls Royce section, prepping for an expected high-net-worth client who was supposed to arrive. Before noon, he adjusted his tie in the mirrored column, eyes scanning for the general manager. "Clarence better be ready," he muttered. "Big client today. We don't need surprises." But the surprise was already pulling up outside. The morning sun glinted off the deep emerald paint of a 1960s Rolls Royce silver cloud as it crept up the dealership driveway. Immaculate, gleaming, unlike anything the staff had seen roll through. The gates in months. It came to a perfect stop in front of the showroom, and out stepped Mr. Franklin Brooks, crisp as ever, in a charcoal suit, gold tie-pin, and polished shoes that clicked confidently against the pavement. He didn't walk in, alone. Miss Thelma Brooks, dressed in a pearl grey dress suit, her wide-brimmed hat gently tilted against the light, took his arm as they entered through the front doors. The room fell into silence. Andre looked up and dropped the brochure in his hand. Jasmine gasped audibly. Even a mechanic from the back, who happened to be walking past the window, stopped mid-step. But Derek only looked confused. He squinted, then smirked. "Well, look who's back," he said under his breath. "Brought her husband for a flex, huh?" He started toward them. "Morning," he called out, tones syrupy sweet. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon, ma'am. Back. For that Escalade?" Franklin smiled. "Just a little. I think we'll pass on your recommendations today." Derek raised an eyebrow. "No worries. You're welcome to browse. We've got a few brochures up front." He paused as a sharp voice from the back cut in. "Mr. Brooks." Everyone turned to see General Manager Clarence Ray hurrying across the floor, sweat already forming on his brow. "Sir, I didn't realize you were coming in person." "Good morning, Clarence," Franklin replied. "I asked Jasmine to gather everyone, didn't I?" Clarence nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. Staff's assembling in the lounge right now." Franklin looked back at Thelma. "Would you like to join us?" She gave him a small smile. "I think I will." The lounge had never been this quiet. Salespeople, techs, receptionists, and even custodial staff filled the seats and stood along the walls. No one quite knew what was happening, but they all felt it. Something had shifted. Franklin and Thelma entered last. He didn't stand behind a podium. He didn't need a microphone. His presence was enough. "Some of you know me," he began. "Some of you don't. I'm Franklin Brooks, CEO and majority owner of this dealership, and the man who, just yesterday, sat quietly in your showroom and watched my wife, my partner of 42 years, be treated like she didn't matter." You could hear a pen drop. Thelma sat silently beside him, expression calm but watchful. "I didn't come to argue. I came to see what kind of place this had become. And what I saw was worse than I expected. Disrespect, dismissiveness, and a culture where people think a customer has to look a certain way before they deserve kindness." He scanned the room, eyes landing on Derek, who was now rigid in his seat, face flushed. "When my wife walked in, she wasn't greeted. She was mocked. She was turned away. And none of you knew that she was married to the man signing your checks." His voice lowered, not with anger, but with weight. "That's the problem. It shouldn't matter who she was married to. She could have been anyone, and she deserved better." Derek stood abruptly. "Sir, I had no idea. If I had known she was your wife..." Franklin raised a hand. "That's exactly what's wrong. You shouldn't have needed to know." Derek froze, mouth open, words dying on his tongue. Franklin looked to Clarence. "Effective immediately. Derek Vaughan is suspended pending formal review. His behavior was not only unprofessional, it was a liability to this entire brand." Clarence nodded. "Understood, sir." He turned to the staff again. "This isn't just about one man. It's about all of us. This culture, this energy, this lack of respect. It ends now." A long silence passed. Then, to everyone's surprise, Thelma stood. She took a slow breath, then spoke clearly, every word landing like truth. "I didn't walk in here yesterday looking for trouble. I walked in looking for a car. But what I found was something that's been going wrong in places like this for too long. People judging others by the outside. Folks thinking age, or clothes, or money should decide how we treat each other." She looked directly at the younger staff. "Don't be like that. Don't make the mistake of thinking you can see someone's worth just by looking." Her voice softened. "Because real class ain't something you wear. It's how you treat people." She stepped back beside her husband. Franklin looked around once more. "I'll be meeting with all department heads this week. We'll be making changes, from hiring to training to customer care. Those who've been doing right will be recognized. Those who haven't, we're done looking the other way." He looked at the staff for one final moment. "I built this business from nothing, and I won't let anyone tear down what I've worked a lifetime to build, least of all with pride and prejudice." With that, he turned, took Thelma's arm, and the two of them walked out, quiet, dignified, and unshaken. Behind them, the room remained frozen in silence. And outside, parked like a monument to quiet power, the Rolls Royce waited. This time, no one laughed. No one dared. It had been 5 days since the truth was laid bare inside Vaughan Elite Motors. 5 days since Franklin Brooks, in a single speech, shattered the illusion that the dealership had been running just fine. And in those 5 days, the energy within the walls had shifted. Subtly at first, but noticeably to anyone paying attention. Gone was the smug laughter near the showroom windows. Gone were the side comments about how people looked like they couldn't afford it. The air was quieter now, not with fear, but with a sense of reckoning. People walked a little straighter, spoke a little softer, watched what they said, and how they said it. For many, it was uncomfortable, but for others, it was a breath of long-awaited relief. Denise Holloway, the interim manager brought in from the Atlanta branch, had hit the ground running. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't loud, but she listened, and that was more than anyone in that building had done in a long time. She held one-on-one conversations with everyone, from janitorial staff to top sellers, asking them a question no one had thought to ask in years. "How do you feel working here?" Some shrugged, some hesitated. Some, like Andre, leaned in close, and whispered things they hadn't dared say out loud. And Denise listened. She took notes. And then she acted. The first thing she did was revamp the morning meetings. They were no longer about sales goals and closing numbers. They began with stories. Times someone helped a customer without trying to sell them. Moments when a teammate covered for someone going through something at home. She gave space for humanity. And slowly, something rare began to grow. Trust. Andre, who had once watched Derek ridicule Miss Thelma in silence, started speaking up. He apologized to her personally one afternoon when she visited to drop off Franklin's lunch. "I should have said something," he admitted, eyes low. Miss Thelma smiled gently and patted his hand. "You're saying it now. That counts for something." Jasmine, the young receptionist, began to flourish. No longer afraid of being dismissed or mocked, she started greeting each guest like royalty, offering water, asking names, even learning the kids' birthdays of returning clients. The change didn't come from fear. It came from someone reminding them they mattered too. Franklin stayed close during this transformation, not as the towering CEO barking orders, but as a quiet observer. He'd show up unannounced, park out back, sit in the customer lounge like any other guest. Some employees caught on and straightened their backs when he entered. But over time, they realized he wasn't watching to catch them doing wrong. He was watching to see who chose to do right when they didn't have to. One rainy afternoon, he sat across from Denise in the glass office that had once belonged to Clarence. "You think it'll stick?" he asked, watching the showroom beyond the window. Denise folded her hands. "If we keep investing in people the way we do in Polish and leather seats, yes, but it has to be real. No more faking it for mystery visits." Franklin nodded slowly. "No more pretending." Outside the office, two young sales associates were helping an older couple from Clarksdale who had come to look at a used SUV. The couple wore raincoats and muddy shoes from the morning's storm. No one blinked. No one turned up their nose. They were treated like VIPs. That had been Thelma's idea. "Start at the door," she had told Franklin one night. "If they feel seen when they walk in, everything else follows." And so he did. She stopped by more often now, not to check in, but to drop off food, or smile at Jasmine, or lend her warmth in small doses. One afternoon, she brought a peach, cobbler to the employee lounge, placed it on the counter, and simply said, "Just a little sweetness for the folks doing good work." Word spread quickly. People said it was the best cobbler they'd ever had. Someone even wrote a note and taped it beside the tray. "For the lady who showed us how to be better." That night, Franklin walked past the lounge, read the note, and quietly folded it into his jacket pocket. He didn't need plaques or press. That was enough. 1 week later, the numbers began to change. Customer reviews were higher. Return clients increased. And more importantly, employees started staying later, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. They believed in what they were building again. By the end of the 3rd week, Denise called a staff meeting, not because something was wrong, but because something was finally, wonderfully right. The team gathered, curious. She looked around and smiled. "I just want to say this," she said, her voice soft but certain. "I've never seen a turnaround like this. Not because of policy, not because of pressure, but because people here decided to change." She looked to Andre, then Jasmine, then to the young service tech in the corner who had started offering free air checks to single mothers in old cars. This is what Royce and Carter should have always been. And because of that, I'm recommending this branch for company-wide recognition. You all earned it. There was quiet applause, humble, heartfelt. And outside the window, the clouds began to part, sunlight spilling back across the concrete. Inside, the dealership, it no longer felt cold. It felt like home. It was late September when the corporate district team made their way to Memphis. The sun was softer now, and a golden hush had fallen over the city as fall crept in. At Vaughan Elite Motors, the showroom gleamed, not just with polished chrome and waxed hoods, but with something newer, something deeper. Pride. Word had spread across the company. The once troubled Memphis branch had transformed in a matter of weeks, not through firings or fear, but through a return to values, respect, care, leadership through humility, the kind of transformation that couldn't be bought, only earned. Now, on a warm Friday afternoon, employees stood in the main hall, some holding glasses of sweet tea and lemonade, others standing quietly in their work boots or dress shoes, waiting for what they'd heard was a special announcement. At the front, Franklin Brooks stood beside a small podium, a modest microphone clipped to his blazer. He wore a calm expression, but in his eyes there was something more. Quiet joy, the kind only a man who'd witnessed redemption could carry. And beside him, as always, stood Miss Thelma. Regal in an ivory blouse and navy skirt, her hands folded, gently, her presence grounding the room like roots to soil. Franklin tapped the mic gently. "Some of y'all know this story already," he began, smiling faintly. "But for those who don't, a few weeks ago, my wife walked into this dealership to surprise me. She came in ready to buy a car. She left with a story." A few chuckles rippled through the room. Thelma smiled but said nothing. She was turned away, mocked, judged by her clothes. Not a single person knew who she was, and more importantly, no one seemed to care. The crowd was quiet. But here's what matters most. That moment, ugly as it was, became the beginning of something beautiful. He turned slightly, nodding toward Denise, who stood among the staff with quiet pride. This team didn't run from the truth. They met it, head on, and they rebuilt something better. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, flat box. Inside was a silver pin shaped like a car key, engraved with a single word: respect. "This is the first of a new company. Tradition," he said. "Every year we'll honor one team with this pin, not for sales, not for numbers, but for heart." He handed it to Denise. "And I'm proud that the first one goes to this branch, because y'all earned it." The room erupted in applause, not loud, not wild, but full of something richer: appreciation, truth. When the clapping settled, Franklin turned toward Thelma. "Now, there's one more thing." He stepped aside. Thelma took the mic. She looked out across the staff, some who had welcomed her with warmth, others who had once looked through her like glass. And she smiled. "When I walked in here the first time, I wasn't expecting a red carpet," she said gently. "I just wanted to be treated like I mattered." She paused. "Some of you didn't know me, but that's all right. I didn't need you to know who I was. I needed you to remember who you are." A hush settled again. "We're not always gonna get it right," she continued. "But we can choose every day to treat the next person better than the last. Doesn't matter how they look, doesn't matter where they came from. What matters is how we make them feel." She looked at Andre, then Jasmine, then the young tech who'd been promoted just last week. "And I want y'all to know, I see you. I see how far you've come. And I'm proud of you." Someone in the back wiped a tear. Someone near the window nodded quietly. Later that evening, as the staff returned to their work and the celebration wound down, Franklin and Thelma stood beneath the dealership sign, golden hour casting soft light across the parking lot. "Do you think they'll keep it up?" she asked him, adjusting the brim of her hat. He smiled. "I think they will. Because this time, they're not afraid of being watched. They just remember what it felt like to be seen." She laughed softly. And all it took was a woman in a church dress and a beat-up purse. He leaned in, kissed her cheek. "Best investment I ever made." They turned toward the curb where the old silver Rolls Royce sat gleaming in the setting sun. Not just a car, a statement, a memory, a reminder that kindness has a cost, and it's always worth paying. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that prove kindness, dignity, and quiet strength never go out of style.